What has become of this city? There used to be laws, justice, not anymore.
Somewhere along the line, licensed games gained the stigma of being generally inferior and forgettable experiences. But luckily, the pendulum is on the upswing with the South Park franchise at the forefront. The 2014 release of The Stick of Truth took gamers by surprise, showing that you could take a licensed property and deliver an original story with fun game mechanics. Capturing the magic in a sequel is always tough, but The Fractured But Whole does a good job of following it up with another great offering, though not without fault. The Switch port does have a number of blemishes like frame rate issues, uneven load times, and some audio-visual cutouts. Though they don't ever cause mechanical issues while playing, I was left pining for a smoother experience. If you're interested in The Fractured But Whole, there's a good chance you already know what to expect from South Park's storytelling and crude humor. The game takes place in South Park, when a player-created new kid wants to join Cartman and the gang as they attempt to build up their superhero franchise. In order to do so, they must find a missing cat to receive the reward of $100, which they can in turn use to further boost their franchise popularity. Of course, this leads the gang on a roller coaster of seemingly random and outlandish events as they both befriend and battle familiar faces to uncover the truth behind the missing felines. In trademark South Park fashion, be prepared for an onslaught of fart jokes, vulgar language, and disgusting situations along your journey, which will be more than enough to turn some off. In fact, the protagonist of the story is known for his unmatched rectal abilities that allow him or her to defy time with the power of farting. Exploring South Park and interacting with the townspeople is a pleasure, and the combat does a very nice job of rivaling that feeling. Battles are turn-based, but instead of remaining stationary, you move within a grid, which varies in size from encounter to encounter. Knowing how to effectively navigate the grid is vital to your success, especially with many skills relying on positioning. Heroes play quite differently from one another thanks to the 10 different classes, so mixing and matching to find your preferred party is extremely satisfying. Each class has 3 unique abilities and a devastating ultimate that can turn the tides of battle on a whim. Some characters focus their powers into one area of expertise, but others are more versatile, which helps to encourage changing instead of finding one grouping and sticking to it. While it is turn-based combat, action commands help mitigate incoming damage and boost output. Battles are relatively sparse, but that helps to keep them fresh, especially considering each battle takes a bit of time to complete. On story missions they're more common, but when running around the town you'll only encounter a handful of them here and there. Traditionally in RPGs, you'll be mowing down hundreds, if not thousands of enemies to increase your level, but The Fractured But Whole strikes a nice balance between fighting enemies and completing quests to power up your hero's level. Upon reaching a new hero level, instead of powering up stats, it unlocks something called an artifact slot. Filling these slots with artifacts will increase your character's might level and in turn make them much more effective in battle. Quests each have a suggested might level, so it serves as a good indication on what you should be focusing on. Artifacts can be found while out journeying, purchased from vendors, or even crafted. I found this to be different, but a welcomed progression change for equipment. It works especially well when the onus is on making your superhero unique, and having stat boosts tied to certain pieces of gear could result in having very similar looking heroes. What is probably the best feature for character progression is being able to change your class at any point in the game with a quick visit to the Coon's lair. As you progress through the game, the ability to mix and match different classes becomes available, allowing further customization. Outside of the main quest, South Park has plenty of sights to see and things to do. Like any good superhero looking to gain notoriety, a recurring side quest will be to get Coonstagram followers by snapping selfies. Every person's requirement for a selfie is different. Some are willing regardless, some ask you to do them a favor first, and others demand that you have a certain number of followers before snapping that selfie. Other side quests see you have a sit down with Mr. Mackey to discuss gender and speaking to Jesus about religion, to name just a few. While most side quests aren't required to progress forward, a few must be completed because of the skills awarded for completion. The quests are usually funny and give some downright silly abilities. For example, sticking a hamster up your butt to launch it at electrical wires to short out a door is something that will happen quite often. Checklist quests also keep tally of certain actions taken during your adventure and yield experience once completing them. Some inconsistent load times are spread throughout, and they are most noticeable when bouncing around town. Arguably the coolest aspect of South Park is that it looks exactly like the TV show, and if someone had walked in and didn't know better, they'd figure they were watching an episode. The feeling is only compounded by the fact that every character is voice acted. Traveling through South Park feels and looks like it should. That is until the slowdown kicks in. Sadly, it is commonplace, but fortunately it was exclusive to traversing town, and I didn't experience any slowdown during battles. In most cases, it was minor and just resulted in the screen movement not being as smooth, but there were a few instances that cropped up where it really started to chug. Coupled with some weird cutout on audio during ultimate moves, and the occasional graphical hiccup transitioning to and from cutscenes, and I couldn't help but wish everything was just a little bit more polished. I found this to be the case in both handheld and docked modes. I want to reiterate that I only found this to be a case outside of combat, so while an annoyance, it didn't cause any issues that prevented me from progressing through the game. When I first picked up South Park: The Fractured But Whole, I knew the humor and overall tone of the game would appeal to me, even being a relatively lapsed fan of the series. What I wasn't so sure of was how well everything else would come together, and barring a few technical issues, I was pleasantly surprised. The battle system, while relatively slow-paced, was engaging, and I never found myself avoiding a chance to get in a skirmish with some 6th graders or police officers. And while the slowdown is noticeable and certainly distracting, I only experienced it in some areas where exploring, and never while engaged in combat. There are some other areas that could use polishing, but putting up with the little annoyances was well worth it to see the game through.